Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn, and today's video I am going to be talking about 24 books that I want to read in 2024. All of these books are set up in 4 beautiful stacks of 6, but all of the books that I'm going to be talking about today have either been on my TBR for 3 or 4 years, or they're books that I've bought within the last year that I want to definitely get to in the new year at some point in time. I don't think I'm gonna have enough time to actually explain each and every one of these books, but if I feel like it's a book that maybe is not super popular or something that I haven't ever really maybe seen other people on this platform talk about, I will briefly talk about it. But other than that, it's just gonna be more of a rapid fire type, I'm gonna read this, and this type of thing. All of these books are physical books that I want to get to, so this is not talking about ebooks or books that are potentially going to be coming out next year. All of these books I have on my shelves already, and I can also get the audiobooks for most of these on Libby through my library, so a lot of these I'm also going to be listening to. But if any of these seem like something that you would like to see me talk about in the future, or in a reading vlog or a reading/writing vlog, let me know. I'm gonna talk about these books in no particular order, just they're in 4 stacks, so I'm just going straight down the list. I'm going to be talking about 24 books, but some of these are also going to be series, so I'm gonna hold up the first book, but I would like to try and get to all of the books in the series. That's also kind of cheating, I know that, but it's fine. It's fine. At the end of the video, I'm also going to have a few honorable mentions. So this is probably going to be my entire TBR for 2024. Primarily, the books that I read are fantasy and thrillers. So a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about today are fantasy and thrillers. I don't read a lot of contemporary or romance or anything like that. I do think there's a few in, like a couple in these stacks that I will eventually get to, but for the most part, it's going to be fantasy and thrillers. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the 24 books that I want to read in 2024. The first book on this list is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. Okay, we're moving forward. The next book on this list is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I tried reading this book back in 2022, but for wherever I was in life, I wasn't vibing with this book, but so many people love it. Next year, I really want to get to it, and I think I'll be at a much better place. I'll be able to enjoy it a lot more because it was a soft DNF in 2022, but I do want to read it because I've heard it's really great, and I think she's coming out with a second book. I want to really get on this train. The next one is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Aldi. I can also get this book on my Libby app, and I had a friend that read this last year and she enjoyed it, so hopefully I will enjoy this one as well. This one is going to be a duology, but I only have the second book in the series because the first book I am lending to my mother, and because I have trust issues, I did not give her both books. So when she's finished with the first book, then I will give her the second book and she can give me the first book back. So the first book in the series is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and this is Crooked Kingdom. It's a spin-off of Shadow and Bone. I've read Shadow and Bone, absolutely loved it, and I really want to go back into the Grishaverse and read this duology. The next one on this list is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read The Starless Sea this year. I loved it. It was a 5-star read. I have heard nothing but great things about The Night Circus as well, so I am excited to get to this one. I bought this for $1 at Goodwill, and I love this cover. It's absolutely stunning. Like, look at that. So cute. The next one on this list, which is a little out of character for me, but I have heard great things about it and I really want to read this. I can also get this on my Libby app, which is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. All right, we're already 1 stack down. Maybe this video won't be quite as long as I thought it was going to be. The next one on this list is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think I'm already on the wait list on Libby, so I can also listen to this book, but it's like a several month wait to read this book, which is perfect because I have 23 other books that I can read while I wait for this one. So this is gonna be one of the books that I don't feel like a lot of people have talked about in the bookish writing community, at least from what I've seen. And this is a memoir, so I am excited to read this one. I am really curious to see how I'll enjoy a memoir. I don't really read a lot of memoirs, but I bought this book. I really want to get to it this year. So it's called War and Me, a Memoir by Faliha Hassan, an intimate memoir about coming of age in a tight-knit working class family during Iraq's seemingly endless series of wars. Faliha Hassan became intimately acquainted with loss and fear while growing up in Najaf, Iraq. Now, in a deeply personal account of her life, she remembers those she has loved and lost. As a young woman, Faliha hated seeing her father and brother go off to fight, and when she needed to reach them, she broke all the rules, traveling alone to the war's front lines, just one of the many shocking and moving examples of her resilient spirit. Later, after building a life in the US, she realizes that she will coexist with war for most of the years of her life and chooses to focus on education for herself and her children. In a world on fire, she finds courage, compassion, and a voice, a testament to endurance and a window into unique aspects of life in the Middle East. Faliha's memoir offers an intimate perspective on something wars can't touch, the loving bonds of family. And the next book on this list is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I did not know that this was being adapted, or maybe it's already been adapted into a film. I didn't know that when I first bought this book, and I don't really know a whole lot about it other than I saw it in one of my used bookstores, loved this cover, and was like, I want to read this even though I have no idea what it's about. I'm super stoked for this one. I can also get this one on audio. The next one is actually, hopefully I could get to all 3 books in this series. I'm only holding up the first one because it's all I grabbed, because these books are chunky, okay? And I was not gonna sit here and hold up all 3 of these books. So the next one on this list is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, along with the 2 other books. And I think he just came out with the 4th book in the series, which I do not own the 4th book because I didn't even know that there was going to be a 4th book. I hope to get to Skyward this year. I have listened to all of Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures online, but I have yet to read any of his books. If I can't get to all of the books, because they are pretty chunky, and I'm a relatively slow reader, but I would at least like to get to the first book in this series. The next one we're getting to, which I'm so excited about, I found it in one of my indie bookstores, is Valiant Ladies by Melissa Gray. I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about this book online. The first time I had ever seen it or heard about it was when I was walking through this indie bookstore and I read the premise, and it just sounded so fun and so cute and so up my alley. So I'll read the synopsis to you guys, and I'm gonna butcher the names, so we're just gonna try our best. By day, Kiki de Sonza and Anna Lamaza de Urenza are proper 17th century young ladies, but when night falls, they trade their silks and lace for swords and muskets, venturing out into the vibrant, bustling, crime-ridden streets of Potosí. That's not correct. In the Spanish Empire's viceroyalty of Peru. They pass their time fighting, gambling, and falling desperately in love with each other. Then, on the night Kiki's engagement to the viceroy's son is announced, her older brother, heir to the family's fortune, is murdered. The girls immediately embark on a whirlwind investigation that takes them to the lowest brothels of Potosí, to the highest echelons of the Spanish aristocracy. The next book that's in the stack over here, before we move over to the other stack that's on this side. This book I am pretty stoked about because I went to Barnes & Noble a couple of months ago. I did not have any books that I wanted to get. I just woke up this morning and was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Barnes & Noble and buy a couple of books. I had posted on my Instagram if anybody had recommendations, any books that they thought that I would like, or any books that they're currently reading that they would recommend to me or to anybody else. One of my all-time besties, Brie Bonomo, she had recommended this book. This is Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. I believe it came out last year and I really loved the premise. I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about this book, so I'll read the synopsis really fast. On Crow Island, people whisper that real magic lurks just below the surface, but magic doesn't interest Annie Mason, not after it stole her future. She's on the island to settle her late father's estate and hopefully reconnect with her long absent best friend Beatrice. Yet Crow Island is brimming with temptation, and the most memorizing may be Annie's new neighbor. Mysterious and alluring, Emmeline Della yes, is a figure shadowed by rumors of witchcraft. Soon, Annie is drawn into a glittering world filled with extravagant parties, a world where the boundaries of wickedness are tested and the cost of illicit magic might be death. The other book on this list that I have not heard people really talk about, and it was one that I found the same time I bought Wild and Wicked Things, I stumbled across this one and I really loved the way this one sounded. It's called The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramis. As an elite spy and the Queen's third in command, Aya has dedicated herself to a life of discipline and duty, using her gods-driven ability to keep dark magic from returning to the realm. Her oath ensures she will always act to protect those she fights alongside, including Will, the Queen's enforcer, and Aya's bitter rival. Forced by circumstances to work together, Aya and Will struggle to come to an uneasy truth. But when tragedy strikes, Aya instinctively reacts, unleashing a power that hasn't been seen in over 500 years. Shaken, she's confronted with an impossible truth, one that threatens the precious grip she keeps on her control, one that forces her to work with Will to discover who or what she really is, and one that could turn her into a weapon in a war she doesn't know how to win. With Will by her side and untold power at her fingertips, Aya will have to decide, has she been sent to save the realm she loves or destroy it? So the next one is kind of similar to Brandon Sanderson's The Skyward trilogy. I want to read The Witcher, and I want to read the first 3 books in the series. I have read one of the 2 prequels. The second one is almost available on Libby, so hopefully I can read that one before the new year so I can start reading this one. But I have Blood of Thieves, The Time of Contempt, and Baptist of Fire. I think there's 2 or 3 other books that follow these 3. I don't own them yet, but I just want to stick with the first 3. I feel like trying to read that entire series next year would be a little overwhelming with all of the other books that I am also reading. So I am just holding myself accountable for the first 3 since I own the first 3, and we'll go from there. The next book on this list, I'm so excited about. One of my favorite booktubers read it last year. Her name is Sid Bookworm. I'll leave her channel linked down below. But she spoke nothing but high things of this series. I just own the first book. Hopefully I can get to more books in this series, but I'm only gonna hold myself accountable to the first book since it's a pretty chunky boy. But it's called Malice by John Gwynne. It's the first book in the series, The Faithful and the Fallen. It's a very chunky one. The next one on this list, I have read the first 2 books in the series. The second book came out in November this past month, and I loved these new covers, so I ended up buying the hardbacks, and I do have the paperbacks as well. Not for this book, but for the other 2 books. And this is Vengeance of the Pirate Queen by Trisha Levenseller. This next book on the list, I have this author listed previously. We'll see if I can get to all of his books, because all of his books I hear are pretty dense and really chunky. So this is another Brandon Sanderson novel, which is Mistborn. I don't really know a whole lot about this one. I think this is also a start of a series. We're moving on to the final stack before I get to my honorable mentions, and I am so excited. The next book on this list is The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I've never read any of this author's work before. I do have The Once and Future Witches on ebook. Haven't read it yet though. Hopefully I can get to that next year, but we're not worried about that at the moment because that's an ebook, and this is my physical TBR. The next book on this list is Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. All right, the next one up is A Door in the Dark by Scott Ragen. I don't think I'm pronouncing his name right. The next one on this list, I keep saying I'm excited to get to these books, which I am, but I'm particularly excited because this author is also a Georgia girl, which I did not know when I bought this book, and I later found that out when I went to Y'all Fest, not this past year, but in 2022. This author was there doing a signing, and I think it said, or I think I looked her up and it said that she was from Atlanta, Georgia. All the more reason why I want to read this book. It is a series, but the first one is Beasts of Prey by Anaya Gray. I absolutely love the cover of this book. I have 2 more books that I want to talk about before we get to my honorable mentions. So one of my all-time favorite authors is V.E. Schwab. I love her writing. I feel like every time she comes out with a new book, her writing just gets better and better and better, and that is just absolutely amazing. So the next book on this list is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I have heard mixed things about this book. I'm still excited to read it because it is V.E. Schwab, but I've heard that it's not her best work. So the last book on this list before we get to my honorable mentions is The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. So those are the 24 books that are on my TBR. Hopefully I can get to them next year. These are going to be the more priority books that I want to get to for a number of reasons that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So now I want to move on and talk about the six honorable mentions. So the first book that I want to talk about is on my bookshelf back there. I forgot that it was over there, and by the time I had sat down and was separating everything, I didn't feel like getting back up to grab that book. That book is The Book Thief by Marcus Zozak. I forgot to mention this book earlier. I don't have an actual copy of this book. I want to own this series or duology, but I borrowed the first book from the library and I loved it way more than I thought that I was going to. And it was so funny because the month that I read the first book, the second book came out and I had no idea it was supposed to be a duology. But the book I want to get to next year is Painted Devils by Margaret Owen. That was not an honorable mention. The next book on this list that's an honorable mention, I think this one is going to be more of one that I am going to read closer to spooky season since it's a thriller, but it's You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Caitlin Bayron. The next one on this list was actually a birthday present called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zavin. The next one on this list I also bought at Target when I bought the other book, but this one is I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me by Jameson Shea. Okay, 2 more books on this list and then we're going to be done. The next one is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. The last book on this list, it's an author that I have mentioned a few more times on here. I would like to get to this book because it's one of the books that he published this year. So this is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. It came out this year. It was part of that Kickstarter thing. I did not participate in the Kickstarter, which I'm really upset about because I had forgotten about it, but that's a whole other thing. So those are all the books that I hope to read next year. But let me know if any of these books that I've mentioned you've read before, you also want to read, or if they're new books that you had never heard of before and they kind of sparked an interest for you. Let me know all of that stuff down in the comments below. But that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching, and if you are not part of my writing journey / reading journey, I would absolutely love to have you along. I am Autumn Ashley and I will see you in the next one. Bye.